nice introduction music. It's a pleasure to be here with my good friend, colleague, co-author. I feel like he's a family member at this point. We've written books together for the last, now almost 10 years. Deepak Chopra, as you know, Deepak Chopra is, he's no introduction. He's a clinician, and he's the father, really, and pioneering founder of the mind-body movement in medicine today. It's interesting, you know, when the mind-body movement first started, many people called it pseudoscience and new age woo-woo, and it was, to some extent, as you know, ridiculed. And now we're seeing in the most prestigious institutions around the world, centers popping up based on mind-body connection, based on integrative medicine. We see the Benson Henry Mind-Body Institute at Mass General. We have the McCann Center for Brain Health. So it's caught on. The mind-body connection and its role in medicine is now here to stay. And you've seen this come from humble and tough beginnings to where we are now. So I thought maybe we could begin and maybe just telling us a little bit about your journey from being a student in India, a dad who was a clinician, your time here in Boston as a resident, and how what was the first spark to start the mind-body movement in your lifetime?
Very quickly, I trained in Boston. Most of my training was in Boston, internal medicine, and then endocrinology, and then neuroendocrinology. So my journey took me from looking at neuropeptides and neurotransmitters as the molecules of experience, or at that time, the molecules of emotion. And later, that evolved into mind-body medicine and then integrative medicine. And right now, my main interest is what people call the hard problem of consciousness. So in summary, I think where we're going is just like we use space-time synonymously, mass and energy synonymously, and wave and particles synonymously, body-mind is one synonym. It's one entity. There's no experience that you have, no experience right now, this experience that we are having, or any perceptual experience, or a mental thought, or an emotion. There's no perceptual or mental experience that doesn't have a biological correlate. And today we have the ability to actually look at these biological correlates, amongst other things, through artificial intelligence, and even look through deep learning how to improve experience, and in turn, change that experience into a biological expression, consciously.
So you've written 85 books now, is that right?
I have written approximately
85, yeah. So not quite a slacker by our definition. We've written 3 books together, and it was a lot of fun. Super Brain, Super Genes, most recently The Healing Self. And the theme in our books is how can you use your life to rewire your neuroplasticity of your brain. Your brain brings you your world. How can you, rather than have your brain just drive you into the next addiction or phobia or limiting belief system, how do you take charge and make better use of your brain to basically take control of your neuroplasticity to bring you a better world? Or likewise in super genes, how do you take advantage of epigenetics to reprogram bad habits and take on good habits such that your transcriptome then helps you in the process? So given the topic of this conference on AI, what is your vision for how AI or virtual reality might be used to make people's lives better, to increase well-being of folks, from their brain to their genes to just overall lifestyle? Does AI have a role?
Yeah, I remember when we started our conversation, Rudy and I met in the men's room. We were next to each other in urinals after a TEDMed conference. And I asked him, is the brain a noun or a verb? And he said, let's go outside and have a conversation.
I can't do that.
Okay. So we started a conversation, which led to the conclusion that there are no nouns as entities. These are conventions of language. Everything is a process. The brain is a process. The body is a process. Genes are processes. Microbiomes are processes. And these processes are influenced by how we experience life in every moment. Perceptual experience and mental experience influences what we call biological processes. So actually, let's put the slide that I brought. I have just one slide to show you. These are some of the well-being trends that are emerging in AI and technology. So in the next few years, if not already, we have this amazing ability to predict disease, to prevent disease, to personalize well-being. And as you can see, there's already the emergence of augmented lifestyle techniques or ability to augment our lifestyle through intelligent apps, analytics. So we are humanizing AI. You can also see that today, you and I visited Lake Nona recently, a futuristic community that has smart homes that not only monitor what's happening in the environment and basically the Internet of all things, but correlate that with things like heart rate variability, blood pressure, your mood, circadian lighting. So the environment and you become totally seamless. And then there are these blockchain movements that are creating their own independent movements for well-being and even the economics for that. And you can see on this slide where we are going. So there's, as I said, you can monitor anything, and then you can use deep learning to actually improve well-being and make it personalized, predictable, preventable, precise, and process-oriented. That's how we understand reality, as a verb, as a process. Everything is a process.
I want to get back to this slide, but I also want to get back to knowing a little bit about you, Deepak, and what was the switch when you were in Boston as a resident or an intern? What was the switch that made you, I mean, you really are considered, no one else can be talked about in the world as the founder of the mind-body movement, which is so prevalent now in medicine. How did it happen? I don't know if folks know this story. Well, you went from being an MD, medical student, intern. How did it happen?
I was in Boston for 25 years. I trained with one of the most amazing people at that time, the president of the Endocrine Society, Seymour Reichland, right here at Tufts New England Medical Center, although I was also for a while at the Deaconess and Joslin clinics. And this was a very interesting time. We were discovering neuropeptides, basically opioid receptors, and became obvious that things like serotonin and opiates and endorphins and oxytocin and now so many other neurotropic factors, that these were in some way representing emotions. These were the molecules of emotion. And not only were these molecules representing what was happening subjectively to you, but at the same time, they were immunomodulators. So there is a confluence of understanding between neuroendocrinology, neuroimmunology, what's happening in consciousness, what's happening in biology. And so that's where we are today. We are looking at brain plasticity through neural feedback and artificial intelligence to accelerate our ability for neurogenesis, for synaptogenesis. We know we can create new neurons, we can create new synapses, but that requires genetic activity. And that's where epigenetics comes in.
Right.
And epigenetics says basically that every experience creates proteins that modulate both the microbiome and gene activity. You can switch on genes and you can turn off genes. You can change the genetic population of your microbiome. 2 million genes, you can change them. You have only 25,000 human genes, and they too can be modulated in their activity. That's where our effort to bring this to mainstream science started, with what we call self-directed biological transformation. And we had published a paper in Nature Translational Psychology. Maybe you can tell them what happened within a week to genes, gene expression, inflammation, telomerase, and how you're replicating that now in other studies, and how artificial intelligence can actually give us the ability to reinvent our body, to reinvent our brain, to reinvent how we express our genes.
Well, the study that Deepak's talking about was very interesting. It involved Elizabeth Blackburn, who's a Nobel laureate that discovered telomerase, the enzyme that extends the tips of chromosomes so as to keep cells living longer and not become senescent. And it also included Eric Schott, some of you may know from Mount Sinai, who worked on us under transcriptomics. So the idea was to take 90 women at the La Costa Resort, where at that time the Chopra Center was. And the idea was to have 30 women who were expert meditators. And this was going to be 1 week, and then randomize 60 women, 30 of them learning how to meditate intensively that week, 30 of them enjoying the resort and relaxing, eating the same food, having the same exposure to the environment. And what we saw was actually, if I was writing a science fiction book about this, I probably would not have gone as far as what we saw, was that we saw a dramatic change in 1 week in telomerase activity. It increased 40% in the meditators, not in just the ones who were vacationing. We saw inflammatory genes going down. We saw for Alzheimer's the amyloid beta protein, where the longer forms of amyloid beta drive amyloidosis in the brain. And what you want to see in the plasma is that the ratio of the bad A beta goes up because you're flushing it out of the brain. And we saw a dramatic increase in what's called the A beta 42 to 40 ratio in plasma, which is indicative of flushing the bad amyloid out of the brain. So we saw all of these effects in just 1 week of intensive meditation. And I guess the question back to you, Deepak, would be, given what we've seen, and now we're actually replicating these studies and going beyond with imaging through the McCann Center together with the Benson Henry, with Sarah Lazar, Brad Dickerson, also including imaging of meditators. That study is ongoing right now at Mass General. But what is the role for AI? I mean, you are one of the guides for meditation with Oprah. You have your 30-day meditation challenge with Oprah Winfrey. Is there a role for AI in helping the people to meditate, given how beneficial it is?
So right now, I am monitoring, or what is being monitored on my devices is my sleep, including deep sleep, dream sleep, my nutrition. All I have to do is take a photograph of what I eat, and my nutrition is monitored, everything from what it contains to the number of calories. My exercise, my vagal tone, my heart rate variability, my facial...
This is all going on right now?
This is all going on right now. My facial expressions, the tone of my voice, breathing patterns, and this data, as it's being collected, it actually correlates ultimately with how I experience the quality of my life. And once we get the correlations between microbial activity, microbiome activity, vagal tone, and subjective experience, through deep learning, we can actually improve the quality of experience, whether it's sleep, whether it's stress management, whether it's movement, whether it's mind-body coordination through various martial arts or yoga techniques, whether it's emotional well-being, nutrition, if supplements are being used and what they're doing. So the future right now is very interesting. In the less than a decade, I believe, and this is going to extend to VR and also to what we call immersive augmented reality experiences. So you can take somebody with, say, anorexia, where the problem is a poor self-image, and you can create a better self-image experientially or change somebody's mood. You can then decrease inflammation. Now,
An interactive mirror?
In an interactive mirror. Now, so here's, Rudy, I want to ask you one question. And this is something I learned from you. You were the first one to tell me that only 5% of disease-related gene mutations are fully penetrant in that they guarantee the disease. The rest are somehow related to the quality of our life, including sleep, delta wave sleep, moods and emotions, exercise, breathing patterns, whether your vagal stimulation is dominating or your sympathetic nervous system is dominating. And all of this is within our control. And for the 5% that are fully penetrant, you'll soon have CRISPR and gene editing for that too. So
to be careful.
I think once we recognize the power of deep learning and artificial intelligence to influence behavior and change in emotions, and the fact that 95% of chronic illness is somehow connected with low-grade anxiety, depression, and low-grade inflammation. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, if you look across age-related diseases, from heart disease to Alzheimer's, and you look at the genetics, you do see the rare forms, which are usually familial, usually early onset, involve highly penetrant mutations that drive the triggers of disease, like amyloidosis in the brain and Alzheimer's. And those are fully penetrant, meaning that they guarantee the disease usually by an early age. But as an Alzheimer's disease, and it's a pattern for other age-related diseases, we now know 35 different genes that have variants in them that predispose you to high risk, but not many of them, I mean, the vast majority are not fully penetrant. So there's something you can do about it with your lifestyle. And this is where the mind-body connection comes in.
But isn't this true of all chronic illness?
It's of the diseases where you have a good genetic, polygenic, understanding, you see the same pattern. So that means that we talked about in our books, if we encapsulate it, we use the term SHIELD, how to basically reduce inflammation in the body. Inflammation is a killer in all diseases of aging, including neuroinflammation and Alzheimer's disease. And SHIELD, yes, stands for sleep. Getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, the importance of after REM sleep and during that deep sleep, your brain cleans itself out of debris. It consolidates short-term memories into long-term memories. H, handling stress, meditation practice. I is interactions, the importance of relationships, that loneliness, not being alone, but loneliness, meaning you're stressed about being alone, is a risk factor for everything from Alzheimer's to heart disease. E is exercise. We know that exercise induces neurogenesis in the brain and protective factors like BDNF. L is learning new things. So if we're teaching people new things, we're helping them. If we're putting them to sleep, we're helping them. Either way. And then, of course, there's diet, where the Mediterranean diet, Ayurvedic diet has been most helpful, and a big emphasis on taking care of your microbiome. We can dramatically change Alzheimer's pathology in an Alzheimer's mouse just by changing the gut.
So think about this. If your body is the expression of your genes, and 2 million of those genes can be changed, the population of those genes can be changed, and the 25 million genes that you got from your parents, their activity can be influenced, you basically can reinvent your body, including influence the biological markers of aging, which we showed. 40% increase in telomerase in a week. There's no drug that will do that.
Well, you had a book, Reinventing the Body. Was it Reinventing the Body, Resurrecting the Soul?
It was called Reinventing the Body.
At the time, it was before its time. Is that fair to say?
Well, you can look at the body as a bunch of biomolecules. That's one way. And that's where molecular biology comes in, and everything that we understand with DNA and epigenetics. But then you can look at the body also as states of energy and information. Mm-hmm. But you can go deeper and look at the body as a modified form of consciousness itself. Because what is consciousness? It's the knowing element in every experience. So we have data, we have information, we have knowledge, and then there's something called wisdom. Okay. we sacrificed wisdom for knowledge, then we sacrificed knowledge for information, then we sacrificed information for data, and now we have to rebuild from data upwards wisdom, which is self-awareness.
Expand on it. We sacrifice wisdom for knowledge, knowledge for information, information for data.
Yeah.
So has data outpaced wisdom?
Data has outpaced wisdom, but now because we have artificial intelligence and also these amazing algorithms and the ability for deep learning, we can see how can we take data to create better information, how can we take information, create more knowledge, and ultimately how can we take knowledge to enhance self-awareness. Wisdom is nothing other than self-awareness, ultimately. That's the highest intelligence. And that's not artificial.
I had a feeling this discussion was going to go in this direction. So I'm going to just keep going further. So we build brain organoids in a dish, right? And we have neural networks. We recreate Alzheimer's in a dish. We have neural networks, have neurons firing. They're talking to each other. They're spiking. Folks are talking about using brain organoids combined with AI, computer-based AI, to eventually start creating entities that are not only AI-based, but actually have a neural or a cellular, biological, organic component. So my question to you, and there's probably no better person in the world to ask this, and we're going to ask it many times in the coming decades, is AI conscious? Is my brain organoid firing away in a dish conscious? Is there consciousness in a future humanoid AI being?
So this brings us directly to what is called the hard problem of consciousness. What is consciousness? And it's defined in many ways. Here are some of the ways we can define consciousness. It's the knowing element in every experience. So right now, you're conscious of being here, and you know that you're here. So without consciousness, there's no knowing of any experience. What we call everyday reality is a perceptual activity in consciousness. So we right now call this the physical world, the physical body. But how do we know this? Because we are experiencing perceptual activity within a narrow band of experience. The human perceptual activity is a very narrow band of experience. Out of, other species have their own brands of experience. So what we call the physical world, including our own body, is a symbolic representation, interpretation of perceptual experience. So when you call brain organoids or neural networks, these are symbolic representations of what's happening in awareness or consciousness, which has no location in space-time. If it had, you'd be able to see it, but awareness is formless. So the future of artificial intelligence is that it will symbolically represent everything that humans can create and humans can imagine. But it will still not have subjective experience, although it will be able to simulate subjective experience.
I got you.
So you say, well, if I stimulate a neural correlator, I can produce an experience. But you can produce an experience by reading a book or seeing a movie or using AI to change the experience of what we call everyday reality.
So the true self, the true you, that AI perhaps will never have. You've done meditations where you allow people to experience that.
Well, can we try something right here?
That's what I was going to do. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question. Please answer it to the best of your ability. Are you conscious right now? Can you be a little more enthusiastic? It's a great privilege to be conscious. Are you conscious right now? Okay, I'm going to ask you the same question, but don't answer it till I raise my hand, okay? Are you conscious right now? Yes. So the question, are you conscious right now, was a thought. The answer, yes, was also a thought. And thoughts are entangled with every experience. Sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, they're all entangled. They're qualia entangled. They're qualities of consciousness. But you're not those experiences. You're the awareness in which those experiences are happening. And that's the still presence that has no form, that we call our spirit, or our being, or our consciousness. So let me ask you the same question. Are you conscious right now? Don't answer it. Just be aware of that which is having this experience. Not only the experience of your own body, but this experience, this experience, this experience. Are you aware, conscious right now? Slip into it. This cannot be replicated by artificial intelligence, because this is the real you.
So, thank you. So Deepak, let's get the slide back on, because I didn't.
Yeah, can we show the same slide, please?
Maybe if you want to, we have about 5 minutes left, and then after you summarize the slide, I'd like to ask you about the Deepak robot.
Okay, so just go to the last item on that slide. It says Dawn of Consciousness Hacking and Biofield Sciences. So right now we can measure heart rate variability, EEG, ECG, galvanic skin response. We can also do photo stimulation. You and I created this device called the Dreamweaver, which is photo stimulation and sound simulation to create the dream state or deep sleep state or meditative state. There are all these other technologies, binaural beats, photic stimulation, et cetera, et cetera. What we are going to see in the very near future is the ability to modulate our experience of what we call the physical body. In the deeper reality, there's no such thing as a physical body, because if you say, I have a physical body, you had many. You started with a fertilized ovum, then you were a zygote, an embryo, a toddler. The body is a process, and it's a process in consciousness. And by understanding how consciousness works and how it is mirrored through artificial intelligence, we can enhance our capacity for well-being. We can enhance our capacity for creativity. We can enhance our capacity for online and offline learning. And ultimately, we can reinvent our experience of what we call the universe. Because the universe is also an experience, a perceptual activity in human consciousness. This is a human universe. It's not the universe.
It's a species-specific
It's a species-specific universe.
Bacterial universe is every.
What does the world look like to an insect with 100 eyes?
So before we end, I like this analogy: wisdom, knowledge, information, data.
And they're all interrelated,
They're
right?
interrelated. Yeah. And you've imparted so much wisdom in your lifetime, in your teachings, your books, your lectures. I've heard that long after you're gone from this planet, you don't plan on leaving, that there will be the Deepak bot. Maybe you can tell us about how people are going to be experiencing your wisdom through AI in the future?
By the end of this year, there'll be an artificial intelligence twin of mine, which will have more information and knowledge
I'll have my twin
to impart than I have, because it'll have algorithms of everything I've learned and will continue to learn long after I'm dead.
Well, I'm not looking forward to having to use the bot, but Deepak, this is, I think we're coming to an end here, and I just want to say thank you for sharing your wisdom and shedding a more of a spiritual and holistic light on AI and the difference between AI and the human experience, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you.